This is Algebra 2 spring test for week 10 study guide. Starting off with angle measurements and standard position. Find the measure of the angle below. And it shows you that this mark here is 20 degrees from that y-axis. So the entire thing, so you're looking for this entire thing. So what it is it's 90 degrees plus 20. So that angle is 110 degrees. Sketching these two in standard position. Remember, standard position means its initial side is there for both of them. And then if it's positive 55, it's going to open up this direction. It's going to open up counterclockwise. Just think about going up from there. So it's going to go up 55 degrees. We know 45 is right in the middle. So go kind of a little bit past the middle, I guess. 55 degrees. That's a good sketch of a 55-degree angle. Negative 150, you're going to go the other direction. You're going to go clockwise because you're going to go down from there. So 150, we know again, if you go all the way to this part here, it's 90. If you go all the way to this part here, it'll be 180. So we got to go not quite to 180. We got to go about 30 degrees less than that. This here is a negative 150 degrees, where this one here was about 55 degrees. This one tells you to find the measure of an angle between 0 and 360 degrees. So find it within one revolution that's coterminal with an angle of negative 110 degrees in standard position. So an angle that's coterminal with it, if it's negative 110, if it's in standard position, you know it's going to start here and it's going to open up. It's going to go down. It's going to open up clockwise. It's going to go this way. So 90 degrees, if it goes straight down, we know it's going to go past that. So it's going to go about right there to be negative 110 degrees. So you want to find something coterminal with that. Real simple. Just go the other direction with it. So go counterclockwise or go positive to that side right there. So open up all the way to that side right there. So easily all you have to do is take 360 and subtract 110 from it. And it's a positive angle of 250 degrees. Remember, only think of negatives and positives as the direction that they rotate. Where positive goes counterclockwise and negative goes clockwise. In which quadrant does the terminal side of 118 lie? Again, you know it starts here. And if it goes to here, it's 90. So you're going to go a little past there, here. This is quadrant 1. This is 2, where the terminal one is. Then we're dealing with trig functions. It says find the sign of the variables. If your answer is not an integer, leave it in the simplest radical form. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at x first. Everything's perspective is from 30 degrees. You have to use 20 times the square root of 3 because that's the given one. So which side does x represent? It's the side that is next to 30 degrees or the adjacent side. And 20 times the square root of 3 is the hypotenuse. So if you go back to your SOHCAHTOA mnemonic device of remembering your trig functions, the one that has an A and an H is the cosine. So it's going to be the cosine of 30 degrees is equal to the adjacent, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 20 times the square root of 3. So to get x by itself, undo the fact that it says divided by 20 square root of 3 and multiply by 20 square root of 3. And if you do it to that side, do the same here. 20 square root of 3 times that. So in order to get what you need, it's going to be 20 times the square root of 3 times the cosine of 30. And that right there is, x's value is 30. In order to find what y is, you're going to look at what y represents. Okay, again, everything is from the perspective of 30 degrees. Y is the one that's opposite it over here. So that's the O. Again, you're going to use this one that we called the hypotenuse a minute ago because it's the given. So we're going to, the one that with an O and an H is the sine. So sine of 30 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is y, over the hypotenuse 20 square root of 3. Again, to get y by itself, just like a minute ago, undo divided by 20 square root of 3 by multiplying both sides by 20 square root of 3. It'll cancel it here and give you y. So 20 square root of 3 times the sine of 30 degrees is going to be 17.3. So your y value is 17.3. I don't want to focus on this part of the directions, so we're gonna ignore this for now, everybody. Number 7, again, we're doing x and y, so go a little quicker with this one. Your perspective's still 30, so that's the adjacent, and this is the opposite. So the one that deals with an opposite and an adjacent is the tangent, the TOA. So the tangent of 30 degrees equals the opposite, which is 17, over the adjacent, which is x. So we have to do 2 moves to get this one by itself. Multiply both sides by x, and that'll cancel it there. So you have x times the tangent of 30 equals 17. Then divide by the tangent of 30 to get x alone. And take 17 and divide it by the tangent of 30. And it gives you 29.4. So x's value is approximately 29.4. We'll do the same thing to find y, except look at what y is. Y is your hypotenuse to go along with your opposite. So the one that deals with an opposite and a hypotenuse is the sine. So your sine of 30 equals your opposite 17 over your hypotenuse y. Again, since y is on the bottom, we have to do 2 steps. Multiply both sides by y to get y times the sine of 30 equals 17. Then divide both sides by the sine of 30 to get y by itself. So do the same thing. 17 divided by the sine of 30. And you get y's value as 34. So those are your 2 sides for x and y, 29.4 and 34, respectively. Number 8 just tells you to write the tangent ratios of angle y and angle z. So again, from angle y's perspective, remember, just do sine, cosine, and tangent. SOHCAHTOA. And then let your secant, cosecant, and cotangent just mirror those with inverses. So is your opposite. So your opposite is 7. So your sine is of, this will be angle y, all of these. Sine of angle y is 7 over your hypotenuse, the square root of 85. Your cosine is the adjacent 6 over the hypotenuse, square root of 85. And your tangent is your opposite over your adjacent, 7 over 6. When you do the secant, cosecant, and cotangent, remember, cotangent goes with tangent. It's just the inverse 6 over 7. Secant goes with cosecant. It's the inverse square root of 85 over 6. And cosecant goes with sine, square root of 85 over 7. That's all angle y. A lot of answers to go with angle y. It asks you to do the same for angle z. So angle z will do the same thing. Sine is, but now your perspective isn't from y. Now your perspective is from z. So the sine is the opposite 6 over the hypotenuse square root of 85. Cosine is the adjacent 7 over the square root of 85. And the tangent is the opposite 6 over the adjacent 7. Again, your other functions go with those. Tangent pairs with cotangent. It's the inverse, 7 over 6. Cosine pairs with secant. It's the inverse, square root of 85 over 7. And sine pairs with cosecant, square root of 85. Again, a lot of answers to go with this, over 6. Number 9 says find the value of x, round to the nearest tenth. You have an opposite and you have an adjacent. That's an O and an A. Remember, SOHCAHTOA. The one that deals with an opposite and an adjacent is this one. Tangent of 30 equals the opposite, x over 7. So multiply by 7 to get x by itself. So 7 times the tangent of 30 is going to give you what you need. So x's value is approximately 4.0. 10, we're doing the same thing, except this time you have an opposite and an adjacent again. Again, it's the tangent, but it's the opposite 9 over the adjacent x. So you got to do it in 2 steps. Multiply this by x and this by x. So you have x times the tangent of 20 degrees equals 9. Then divide both sides by the tangent of 20. So 9 divided by the tangent of 20 gives you approximately 24.7. So x is approximately 24.7. Number 11, write the ratios for sine and cosine of angle A. So this one, a lot less to do with this one. You're just talking about the sine. It's the SO and the cosine, the ka part of SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite, 3, over hypotenuse, 5. The cosine is the adjacent, that's 4, over the hypotenuse, 5. Sine and cosine of angle A. Find the value of x, round the nearest tenth again. You have, this is your perspective, you have an adjacent and you got a hypotenuse. So the one that deals with an adjacent hypotenuse is the cosine, C-A-H part, the ka part of SOHCAHTOA. So cosine of 28 equals the adjacent 11 over the hypotenuse x. 2 steps, you got to multiply both sides by x. You get x times the cosine of 28 equals 11, then divide both sides by the cosine of 28. So again, 11 divided by the cosine of 28. 12.5, we're still rounding to the nearest tenth, so x is approximately 12.5. 13, we're doing the same thing. We got an adjacent and a hypotenuse. So we're using the cosine again, the ka part. Cosine of 36 equals the adjacent x over the hypotenuse 10. Only one step this time. Multiply both sides by 10 since x is on top. So 10 cosine of 36 is going to give you what you need. You get approximately 8.1 for that one. Still finding the value of x, still rounded to the nearest tenth. We got an opposite and we got an adjacent. So we're using the TOA part, tangent. So the tangent of 40 equals the opposite, x over the adjacent 11. Multiply both sides by 11. So 11 times the tangent of 40 will give you what you need. X is approximately 9.2. '15 says to approach the runway, a small plane must begin a 9-degree descent starting from a height of 1,125 feet above the ground. To the nearest tenth of a mile, how many miles from the runway is the airplane at the start of this approach? So we're looking for this value here. Okay, we know this is 9 degrees here. Okay, we're not going to be able to use 9 degrees. We're going to have to use its complement, which is whatever this degree measurement is. So that's going to be 90 degrees, the whole thing. So its complement here will be 81 degrees. So we have to use that one. We can't use 9 degrees because we don't know this measurement here. So we're doing the same thing. This is our perspective now, 81. We know we have an adjacent and we have a hypotenuse. So we're using the cosine. It's the ka part of SOHCAHTOA. Cosine of 81 is equal to the adjacent, which is 1125, over the hypotenuse variable. Multiply both sides by x. X times the cosine of 81 is 1125. Divide both sides by the cosine of 81 to get x by itself. And that'll give us our distance. So 1125 divided by the cosine of 81 degrees. 7,191.5 feet. To the nearest tenth of a mile, so that's what we'll go with. X is approximately 7,191.5 miles away. '16 says to write this as a single logarithm. First thing you want to do is move these two numbers into exponent form. So move 2 to the back, and it'll say log base b of w squared. Move this one to the back, plus log base b of y to the 7th. Next thing you want to do, remember, addition pairs with multiplication. Both of them are log base b. So it becomes log base b of w squared plus, it was plus, so it becomes multiplication, w squared times y to the 7th. '17, we're doing the inverse of, we're doing backwards what we just did. Division pairs with subtraction. So it becomes log base 7 of c minus log base 7 of 11. That's the expanded version. Only one step there. We didn't have to move the exponents to coefficients. 18 says use the change of base formula to solve this one. We can't, there's no number that we can use for 8 and 21. They're not multiples of each other. So what we need to do is we need to take the log wherever your x is. It's right here, 2x. We have to take the log of base 8 of both sides since this base is 8. So log base 8 of 8 to the 2x power is equal to log base 8, whatever that was you're doing on this side, of 21. The reason we did that is because this cancels out this. So what that leaves us with is 2x is equal to log base 8 of 21. From there, In order to get x by itself, you divide to cancel out this 2 times x. So that'll give us x alone. If we do it there, do it here. Now this says log base 8 of 21 divided by 2. So we have to use the change of base formula. What that means is anytime you have something different besides log base 10, this portion alone right here means log base 8. Since it's at the bottom, it's going to stay at the bottom. Let me write it a little lower. Log base 8 is being divided. That's what's the denominator. I'm having problems saying it. Log of 21 divided by the log of 8. And then those are being divided by the last part, 2. So I know that looks goofy to say that, but you're going to do it just like that. Log base 2, log 21 divided by log 8, and then divide all of that by 2. And it says round to the nearest 10,000. I get a number that says x equals 0.732052, and it keeps going. We're going to the 10,000. 10th, 100th, 1,000th, 10,000. So that's as far as we want to go. So x is going to be approximately 0.732. We're going to round that one to, say, 1. Okay, dividing these, 675. Both of these are the cube root, so you can divide 675 by 5, and you get 135. So we have the cube root of 135. And then you have x to the 28th, x to the 28th, and x to the first power at the bottom. So when you divide the same bases, x and x, you subtract 28 minus 1. So it becomes the cube root of 135x to the 28 minus 1, which is 27th. Do the same thing with the other one. 54 divided by 2 is going to be 27. Be the square root of 27. And then again, x to the 26th divided by x to the first power is x to the 25th. 21 tells you to add, if possible. Both of them say the square root of 2x. So you add 2 and 2, and you get 4. You add that and that. You get 4 times the square root of 2x. Simplifying these, remember the bottom number in the fraction tells you the index. So when we convert this, well, actually we'll do it this way instead. You're multiplying the same bases, 16 and 16, so you add the exponents. 16 to the 1/2 plus 1/2 gives you 16 to the 2/2, or 16 to the first power, which simplifies to 16. For this one, when we convert it, the bottom number, the denominator, is the index. That's the little number that goes right here. So it's the cube root of 27. The numerator is what you raise it to after it's done. So the cube root, what times itself 3 times is 27. We know 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So this simplifies to the number 3, and 3 when you square it is 9. (24) tells you to write this one in radical form. Well, the only thing being raised to the 3/4 power is x, not 3. So what this is saying is 3 times the radical of x. Remember, this is the index, so it's the 4th root, and it's being cubed after the fact. So 3 times the 4th root of x to the 3rd power. It says write this one in simplest form. Both things are getting the negative 2/3 power. So 27 is being raised to the negative 2/3, and a to the negative third is being raised to it. Now, when you raise a power to a power, you multiply the exponent. So negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6, and 6 divided by 3 is a squared. So you have 27 to the negative 2/3 times a squared. Anytime you have a negative exponent, that tells you it's got to ride the elevator, it's got to go down. So this 27 is the only thing that's riding the elevator to go down. So it's going to go down. A squared is going to stay on top. 27 is going to come down and become to the positive 2/3. Again, the bottom number is the index. So rewrite it in radical form. A squared. 27 is going to be the cube root of 27. Remember, this is your index. The top number is what you raise it to after the fact. So a squared staying on top. The cube root of 27 we know is 3. We did it a minute ago. And 3 squared is 9. Here's your simplest form. A squared over 9. '26, multiply or divide, state any restrictions. Division tells you need to multiply by the reciprocal. So the first fraction stays as normal, q plus 1 over q minus 1. It becomes multiplication, and it uses the reciprocal. Factor out the bottom and make it into the top. Q times Q gives you Q squared. The only factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. 2 and 3 won't get you to 7. So you got to use 1 and 6. This tells you they're the same sign. This tells you they both minus. Minus 1, minus 6. Q minus 3 stays on top, or it goes from the top to the bottom now. Cancel out what's exactly the same. Q minus 1 is exactly the same. You're left with Q plus 1 on top times Q minus 6. And on the bottom, you have Q minus 3. So this is it when you multiply or divide. When it says state any restrictions, remember, any restrictions or anything that's going to give you 0 on the bottom. So the restriction is Q cannot be 3. That's the restriction. Any number but 3. Factor this expression, your factors of 35. You know this one's going to be x and x, 35, 1 and 35. 2 doesn't go into it, 3 doesn't. 5 and 7 goes into it. We'll use those. 5 and 7. This tells you same sign. This tells you both plus. Plus 5, plus 7. 28, solve the equation. Check your solution. Undo your order of operations. Undo minus 10 by adding 10 to both sides. Negative 8 plus 10 is positive 2. It's the square root of j. Undo the square root of something by squaring it. If you square it there, square it here. 2 squared is 4 equals j. Check your solution. When you plug 4 in, the square root of 4 is 4. Is 2. 2 minus 10 is equal to negative 8. Solve this one by finding square roots. Divide both sides by 4. X squared equals 9. Undo squaring something by taking the square root of it. X equals the square root of 9 is both 3 and negative 3. And then number 30 says complete the square to solve it. You have to move 22 over by subtracting it on both sides. X squared plus 10x plus c is negative 22. Get a new c value by dividing 10 by 2 and getting 5 and squaring it. Positive 25. When you add that to both sides, you get 3 on the right-hand side. When you take this perfect trinomial, when you take the square root here, you get x. The square root here, you get 5. This goes in the middle. X plus 5 squared equals 3. Undo squaring something by taking the square root of everything. X plus 5 equals, well, plus 5 equals the square root of 3. Undo plus 5 by subtracting it on both sides. And if we write it in standard form, x is going to be equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 3.